Howdy folks, this is Father Dougal 9000 here, and welcome to another episode of Dougal's Game Finish Chronicles, a series where I talk about the games that I have played and have also beaten as part of the Game Finish Challenge from the Hardcore Gaming 101 forum. Things are gonna be ever so slightly different today because I am talking about four, count 'em, 1, 2, 3, 4 whole video games. Not for any special reason, just that a couple of the ones that I talked about ended up being really short and I thought I might as well stick in an extra game for fun. Cause hey, if you can't talk about 4 video games for fun, what can you do for fun? Today's games were originally logged from the 20th to the 30th of March 2021. Ooh, 10 whole days. Us! Tatakae Ouendan for the Nintendo DS. One of my favorite DS games is the incredibly earnest rhythm game Elite Beat Agents, and I've always wanted to play the Ouendan games that spawned from. Now that I've got Twilight Menu Plus installed on my modded 3DS and can play DS ROMs, I decided to grab the original Ouendan and give it a go. This is going to be brief because I was incredibly knackered when I originally wrote this, but it's a very good game. Despite the Japanese text, it's very easy to understand what's going on thanks to the hilariously drawn comic panels. And while I'm not keen on some of the music, feels a bit too pop rock song stapled to a mid-2000s anime opening for my tastes, it's still a great time overall. Definitely one worth checking out if you're an Elite Beat Agents fan, and I'll hopefully get around to the sequel at some point. Choujin Sentai Jetman for the Famicom, or the Nintendo Entertainment System, whichever of those you prefer to use. For whatever reason, I was convinced that I'd never properly finished this game, despite actually having done so a few years ago. I'd completely forgotten about that until I reached the final level, where the aesthetics seemed incredibly familiar to me. Still, it's funny to know I've actually beaten this one twice now. It's a pretty simple and easy platformer, but it's well made in all the good ways, so even though it'll take less time to beat than watching an episode of Everybody Hates Chris, and that's very short indeed, it's still a good time all the same. The only tricky parts are the mecha fights that serve as the boss battles, but they all share the same patterns, so they're quick to understand and get through. Definitely worth checking out if you want a good, brief action game, especially if you're into the old Super Sentai Power Rangers based video games of this era. Also, if you haven't seen it, check out Choujin Sentai Jetman. I haven't seen it in 12 years, but it was a very, very good telly show. Definitely worth a watch if you're into the old tokusatsu. Steadfast for the Android. Yes, I'm actually talking about a smart tablet phone video game for once on one of these. Goodness. I wanted to play something relaxing after a few days of playing surprisingly hectic games. Don't believe what random forums say. Pilot Wing 64 is stupidly stressful in every area besides maybe the Birdman mode. So I hit up itch.io and found this visual novel made by Grunt Steel and Drakes. It's a short enough story, about a poet named Finn and a town guard called Steadfast, who have feelings for each other, but are scared to act upon for fear of rejection, both from the other person and from society in general. Yes, it's a gay, romantic visual novels about anthro-animals, and I'll happily admit I like playing those types of games. I am, as the Finnish like to say, furry trash and proud of it. For what it's worth, it's a pretty alright game, though I happily admit that my issues, or is it just issue, with it yeah, they're not so much flaws, but more things I'm not into. For example, the fact that both characters have very similar writing voices for their internal monologues does convey how much alike they are, but I find it rather boring because it feels like I'm just reading the same types of thought processes over and over again. That especially goes for the whole romantic angle they're playing up of person A fancies person B but thinks they won't reciprocate, while person B fancies person A but thinks they won't reciprocate as well. I've read too many stories of that sort over the years and felt myself thinking on repeated occasions that particular line from the Vicar of Dibley, "Oh, for heaven's sake, just kiss, you morons!" The actual execution of those ideas is fine enough for what it is, and there are some pretty interesting things going on as the game reaches its conclusion, but nah, it's very much not for me. If I didn't need that relaxing, not hectic game, I probably would have given up after half an hour. Still, it's a free game that you can get on most platforms, so, if it sounds like it's up your alley, give it a go. Prequel Adventure for the browser. This is a pretty interesting game in that it's actually a tie-in to the sort of interactive fan comic Prequel by Kazerad? It's a comic that takes place in the world of Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion a few weeks before that game's events kick off, and it focuses on a newly emigrated, incredibly unlucky Khajiit named Katia Madigan who's just moved to Kvatch in an attempt to start her life over. The game's meant to serve more as supplementary material to the comic, in a similar fashion to what you'd see in Homestuck, at least from what I understand. I've never read either, so I can't say a lot more than that. And because it's supplementary, it's not particularly long. You just walk around the town of Kvatch talking to various characters, some of whom are from Oblivion and are included in a way that feels like a genuinely nice nod to people who've played that game. Heck, the fact that it takes place in Kvatch, of all towns, is pretty cool considering its significance to the main quest of Oblivion, and how that frames certain conversations or your ability to visit certain parts of the town. It's a fairly cozy game with some cute artwork, relaxing music, and plenty of quietly amusing conversations with the citizens of Kvatch. I don't know if I'm interested enough to go back and read the comic when I kind of prefer this Japanese adventure game interpretation of that whole thing, and would love to keep up with the characters this way. But it was pretty cool to be able to discover that new corner of the world through this random little game that I found on a website one night, and that's always worth celebrating. And with that, we've wrapped up another episode of the series, our 13th one. Ooh, fancy that. I hope that you enjoyed watching, and that you'll tune in for the next video, which will probably have just the 3 games again. I know, sad and all that, but, life's fun being spontaneous and all that malarkey. Thank you so much, and until we meet again, have a wonderful day.